Welcome back, America's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by United States Senator Roger Wicker from the great state of Mississippi. I wanted to talk to him about a speech and we will talk about a speech he gave on the Navy last week because it's near and dear to my heart. But I got to begin by asking you, Senator, first, welcome. Good to have you on the program.
Well, thanks for having me. Good to talk to you again.
Do they brief senators after a massacre like Sutherland Spring? Do you get a memo from the Secretary of the Senate with the background on what has happened, or are you just like the rest of us, learn it in bits and details as it comes out?
I'm just like the rest of America. We're getting back for our session this afternoon from our various states, and maybe that there's a briefing, but no, I don't know any more than you do. And it just, and frankly, Hugh, I don't have any more answers than anybody else.
There aren't any. I had on Mark Walker.
Unpredictable.
Yeah, I'm sure that Mississippi is dotted with some of the 16,000 Southern Baptist churches that are just like this one. Small communities of under 200 people that gather. And they're not going to have surveillance at the door, and there's no way to stop this.
No, you're exactly right. This reminds me very, very much of the little Baptist church that my granny and granddaddy took me to down in Calhoun County, Mississippi, when I was growing up. Yes, maybe 50 people, 75 people in a worship service, and totally vulnerable. And typically somebody across the street who believed in the right to keep and bear arms, that was able to run, get a gun, and engage this guy as he left the church and chase him down and bring him to his fateful end. But yeah, it sounds a lot like the kind of folks that I see all over my state of Mississippi.
You know, I know as a senator you have to travel the state, and they will be asking you for solutions, but sometimes you just got to say, I can build more ships, I can fix our defense problem, we can talk about the Iranian deal, we can do that, but I cannot stop crazy. Because, I mean, that's not a government problem. The government can't stop crazy. It's really hard to tell people that.
Well, we can look at mental illness, and I don't know, this guy was court-martialed for a violent act, but tens of thousands of people are convicted and go to jail for a while for an assault, and we can't keep them forever. So it's just something you struggle with. If we could identify some trait that makes a person likely to do this, then we'd be a lot smarter than we've ever been in the history of the world.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, there's a brand new book out called World Without Mind about Facebook and their algorithms. There may be an algorithm that would identify potential killers, but I don't think a free society would ever employ it because it becomes very close to the surveillance state that we hate. Senator, I've got you. You're an expert on the Navy. You build a lot of ships in Mississippi, don't you?
Well, our talented shipbuilders in a number of places around the country, including Pascagoula, Mississippi, build a lot of fine ships.
Yeah,
they'd like to build more.
They are. You know what you're talking about. The reason I said that is that some people come from landlocked states, don't know much about shipyards, but you've got shipyards. You actually know that we are not maintaining them the way that they need to maintain, that we're not expanding them, we're not building enough ships. How critical is the deficiency, do you think?
Well, let me tell you, when I was in the House, I was on the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. Now I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and they've given me the great opportunity of being chairman of the Sea Power Subcommittee. So I've seen this time and again, and particularly during 8 years of the Obama administration. We get these admirals before us and appointed secretaries, and at one point there was a 303 ship requirement. At one point it's a 313 ship requirement, and we ask, okay, now this is a requirement. It's not just a goal, not just something that we'd like to see that's pie in the sky. It is a requirement to defend our country. When are we going to get there? And we always get the same lip service. Well, sir, resource constrained and all of that. So, to me, with the election of Donald Trump and a new requirement of 355 ships, which means 80 more ships than we have now, I just saw that as an opportunity to actually get everybody's attention and put our legislation and our money where our mouths are. And so that's the reason for getting together with Chairman Rob Whitman over on the House side and actually making 355 ships the policy of the United States of America.
Now, I had the Secretary of the Navy, Richard Spencer, on my MSNBC show last Saturday.
I like.
He's smart, real smart guy. He's a great cheerleader for the Navy. He says they're still committed to 355 ships, but he had his acting undersecretary go out and say, we're not going to get there until mid-century. That's not acceptable, is it, Senator?
Well, let's don't blame the Secretary of the Navy for something that an Obama holdover said. My understanding is that after that speech by Undersecretary D, he was called on the carpet by the Navy leadership, and basically what I would have wanted to ask him is, have you been asleep since January 20th, when the subcommittee in the Senate has had 5 hearings on this, and when we have absolutely made it clear that we are ready to go hand in hand with the Navy leadership and actually get us 80 extra ships and an adequate minimum size fleet of 355 within just a little over a decade. And so it's just astounding to me that someone like Undersecretary D would have totally missed all of the talk and all of the planning and all of the effort made to turn this inadequacy of the Navy around.
Now, Senator Wicker, I pressed Secretary Spencer for a plan, something that has got the sign-off of the Senate Armed Services, the House Armed Services, and the President and the Department of Defense and the Navy. And that everyone signs a plan that says these ships in these categories are going to be recalled from the Ghost Fleet. These ships are going to get built at these shipyards in these years so that Americans have metrics. There isn't another business in the world that runs without metrics like this.
Well, I think we are seeing that sort of plan. I can tell you that we have asked our staff on the full Armed Services Committee of the U.S. Senate to get such a plan together. And I know that Secretary Spencer is working to get just such a plan together, and it can be done. When you talk about reactivating ships from the ready reserve, or what you're calling the Ghost Fleet, that gets a little harder to do than simply keeping some ships longer. I think there's actually there's a lot more possibility in getting us to 355 by the late 2020s. If we can just keep some ships from being retired, some ships really only have about 15 years use, and that we can certainly go longer than that. And then we need to embark on a program of building more ships. And I know you were talking about in that interview. I was happy to read it. I'd like to get to 12 aircraft carriers.
Yep.
And you know, Hugh, when you get to an aircraft carrier, what goes with it is a carrier battle group, which includes the whole configuration of a variety of ships that go along with the carrier as it makes its way around the world. I don't know if we're going to be able this year to authorize the dual acquisition of the carriers, but we're going to do some dual acquisition in the bill, and I honestly think we're putting the final touches on it this week and next. And I hope the President of the United States is signing that defense authorization bill when he gets back from his international trip. And frankly, this will be a great opportunity for Donald Trump to talk about the fact that this new legislation puts us far closer than we've gotten in years and years to actually building the requirement that the generals and admirals tell us is a minimum requirement.
Well, good luck on that. I spent most of my time with Majority Leader McConnell talking about the tax bill on Saturday, but the next order of business to me is the Defense Authorization Act and getting rid of the sequester. Last question. Will the sequester be dead by this time next year, Senator Wicker?
I certainly hope so. And shame on us if it isn't. Sequester was never supposed to happen. It was supposed to be so severe, and the impact, particularly on national security, was be so onerous that we would never do it. And instead, the hope was that we would slow the growth rate, just slow the growth rate of programs like Medicare and Medicaid. Nobody is ever talking about cutting those programs. They're vital and they're important and they're popular. But that's what Graham Cassidy would have done, just gradually slow the growth rate of some of these programs to free up some money in future years so we can take care of securing our country right now with the minimum Navy that our admirals and generals say is required.
Roger Wicker, thank you so much for spending time with me, Senator. Come back early and often. We'll follow this, especially as the appropriation bill gets through, and I appreciate your taking the time with me this morning a lot. Come back.